Good morning, everybody. So welcome to day 50. Yeah, day 50 of needs a celebration somehow of this compassionate response to COVID-19. So my name is Mahabodhi. I'm a member of the Triratna Buddhist Order, based in Manchester, and I've been doing a series of themes over the weeks. So we've had 7 weeks now of sessions, and in the first series, it was we covered introducing meditation, and then the Tibetan Book of the Dead and the 5 Buddha Mandala. So focusing on the idea of the Bardo's dangerous pathway, the dangerous pathway that's there in life, after death, in all sorts of situations. We're often just we're on a dangerous pathway of choices, that we have to make, and difficulties that we have to face. So that was series 2, and then series 3. I looked at the Buddha's teaching on mindfulness. 9 sessions on that. Looking at my own kind of work on that in that area. So I've been writing a book on mindfulness called Mindfulness: The Undiscovered Foundations, and in those sessions I explored the different relationships between the 4 foundations of mindfulness: body, feeling, mind and emotions and views, and how they're interacted through the law of conditionality, which is the central teaching of the Buddha, that all things arise in dependent on conditions. So how body affects mind, how feeling affects views, all the different relationships. So that was series 3, and then series 4 focused on the more practical aspects of isolation. So the idea that we're in lockdown, and is there anything that Buddhism can say to that? And explored ideas around companionship and structure, and dealing with how the Buddha dealt with fear, those sorts of areas, and going on retreat, and then in the what we're on now, the fourth series focused on friendship, making friends, what spiritual friendship is in Buddhism, and then on to friendship in society, and then unconditional love. Had 3 sessions on that, on loving kindness, and also both as something to be cultivated and also something to be received from outside. So the final session was on Pure Land Buddhism, and how the vow of Buddha Amitabha is, we can have faith in that he's there for us, and will kind of bring us to the happy land of Sakavati. And then we had a series on ritual and devotion. I think I've remembered them all. And then we're now on to Buddhist metaphysics. So in Buddhist metaphysics, I covered the middle way in the first session. The middle way between eternalism on the one hand and annihilationism on the other, that they're somehow fixed and permanent. There's a permanent essence to things. Is one extreme, and the fact that everything's just fluid, and we're just going to be annihilated at death, and there's nothing after death. There's no, in a way, a view that tends towards hedonism. So we've got these 2 extremes of maybe kind of severity on the one hand, severity towards yourself, and kind of being kind of idealistic, but maybe a bit harsh on the one hand, and maybe on the other hand being a bit too kind to yourself, a bit too, just having too many luxuries and not worrying about the consequences of that. So the Buddhism is a middle way down between those 2 extremes, where we're working with conditions. We are trying to bring about pleasure and happiness for ourselves and others, but we're doing it in a kind of way which is aware and aware of others, and isn't going to cause ourselves problems in the future. So that was the middle way, and then we looked at the Buddha's enlightenment on Buddha Day, which was last Saturday, and looked at different how that's described in more prose-like and more poetic Buddhist texts. And then after that we went into being and doing, so I explored the different models of Buddhism that different schools adopt. You know, so there's the cool structured, the hot structured, the cool unstructured, and the hot unstructured, and looked into Dzogchen and Mahamudra Buddhism. That's that sort of area. And then yesterday I looked at Buddhism and science. So we're now kind of moving on to today, which is secular mindfulness. So having been writing a book on mindfulness since 2005, I've been quite involved really with the development of in a kind of parallel sort of way. I've not been directly involved in it, but I've been observing it. I've been kind of thinking a lot about it, about the whole rise of mindfulness. So it was all in its infancy when I first started writing my book, so looking at some of the issues around that, and also so I'm going to explore this book, Mindful America by Jeff Wilson, which came out about 6 years ago, and he what he does is he kind of outlines the whole way in which mindfulness has come into Western society and kind of merged in a way with Western values and issues around that. So that'll be interesting to look at that. But also, I'm going to. I went to this conference in Rome in 2008 on behavioural psychotherapy, and it included a large chunk of mindfulness-based therapies. So I'm going to look at that as well. I'm going to look at what the third wave of behavioural psychotherapy was, which is mindfulness-based approaches, the different therapies that evolved, and I'm going to try and I did a lot of work actually in creating something I called Book of Correlations. So this is from 2006, 2007. I started to map some of the ideas of secular mindfulness onto a kind of Buddhist map. I'll sort of share some of that in a way to try and contextualise the secular mindfulness within the kind of the bigger picture, which from a Buddhist point of view, the Buddha has a big picture of mindfulness than the secular mindfulness view. So that hopefully that will kind of help, show how what I'm doing relates to that mindfulness movement. So that's it for today. That's what we're going to do today. Seems like quite a lot, really, but it'll be good. So we'll begin. Maybe just check in first of all with how you are. So it's been 7 weeks now since I stopped going into work, and I'm furloughed, and just having a sense that just marking time, and maybe having a sense that of congratulating yourself for getting to this point. I was watching some clip on YouTube from people in Western Supermare in the UK, And there's one woman was sort of saying, "Oh, I've had enough of this lockdown," and really. So there must be quite a few people that are feeling a bit like that, and there's tendency to want to just throw it all up in the air and just start being normal again. And that's completely understandable. So it's almost like, we need to allow those feelings to be there, not sort of suppress them. Allow them to be there, but also have another sense of a view about things. The view that the government's trying to get us to have is that we need to be responsible and to be thinking of others and to be seeing that our actions have consequences. So so from a Buddhist point of view, that those two things can be there, can be there at the same time. The feeling that I just want to throw it all up in the air and get out, and then the view that maybe that's not a good idea. So and how can I maybe do some of that freedom type thing, but more internally or something like that. Some like kind of creative response. I mean, there's a friend I was on a video Zoom call yesterday. I'm on a retreat at the moment, online retreat with 70 order members. One of the guys is in Tucson, Arizona, and somebody said, "What's the temperature there?" And he said 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And he says, "Well, this is just normal here, So it's like we don't kind of go out anywhere, except to see friends in the heat of the day and everything. So just think that maybe, well, for some people it's like that anyway. That you got to work with the conditions that you're in and the limitations. I remember being on my ordination retreat, and it just in Spain, and it's just unbearable. Like how hot it got quite early in the morning, and drove me nuts. But anyway, we have to work with these things. Okay. So we'll do some meditation, but first of all, we'll do some body work. We'll do some doing and qigong. The old traditional Doin Japanese self massage. Okay, so rub your hands together to start with. Backs of your hands. Put your arms. Maybe give your hands a bit of a squeeze. And then just drumming with your fingers on the top of your head. Just acknowledging how you're feeling at the moment. Allowing that into your experience, the truth about how you feel. Being aware of the contact of your feet with the ground. So having a sense of what your body, what your body's telling you it needs. So what does it need? How is it feeling? Is it feeling like it wants to slump? Just lightly drumming on the back of your head, back of your neck. And just do this sort of thing, just backwards and just listen to the sounds as you do this with your hands. So we're trying to get into our physical experience. Maybe take a few deeper breaths. And then giving your face a bit of a wash with your hands. Just holding your hands over your face and breathing into your hands. Just enjoying the feeling of the moisture in the air around your face. And shake your hands out on your feet. Okay, and then just put your elbow into the palm of your hand and going over the top of your shoulder, trying to get onto your spine, stimulating your top of your back. And then on the other side. On your chest. Down your sides. Then down your arm. And when you get to the back of your hand, make it a little bit painful. It's really painful because there's tension there, which you're helping to release by doing this. And palms of your hands, and up the inside, and then the other side. Back of your hand. And then palm of your hand. Up the inside. And then just circling your hands on your stomach clockwise. And listening to the sound of your clothes as you're brushing your hands over your shirt or whatever it is. Nice slow circles. And then lightly drumming on kidneys at the back there. And then more heavily on your buttocks. Try to get your backs of your legs. And then go down your legs as far as you can go. And then shake everything out. Well, I feel better for that. Yeah, it's really quite stodgy before. Actions have consequences. There you go. Okay, so that's the stimulating part. So now the smoothing out of the energy part. So just putting your hands on your stomach and just let your breath become calmer. Just waiting for yourself to calm down a little bit. Being patient. And then when you notice that you do feel actually ready, on the next out breath, bending your knees, so you're going down on the out breath, and then on the next in breath, straighten your knees. Make it quite deliberate, so you're going down on the out breath. Noticing if you're not moving, you might be a little bit still stuck in your head, not in your body. So we're trying to get into our body. So put your thoughts to one side, somewhere else, the other side of the room, and just bend your knees on the out breath and straighten them on the in breath. Let your mind be lazy, doesn't need to be directing anything. Just doing a physical action, bending your knees and straightening your knees. Bending your knees, straighten your knees. So on the next time you're coming up, just bring your hands up to your chin, and then turning at the chin and taking them down to your hips, and then turning at the hips, and then bringing them up to your chin, and then taking them down on the next out breath, and then up on the in breath. And just imagine that right through the centre of your body, there's like a golden ball of energy that's coming up with your hands to your throat, and then it's going down to your belly, and then it's coming up again to your throat, and then it's going down to your hips. It's coming up, and as it's passing your different parts of your spine, it's bringing a sense of energy and vitality and healing. And keep coming. Next time, just keep going past your chin, up into the air. The ball expands outwards, and then just bringing your hands slowly down to the bottom again, and then coming up the middle with the ball, and then the ball expands out into a big one, and then it comes down. Opening your chest. Maybe at the top the ball just expands and diffuses. That's probably the best version. And then you pick it up at the bottom again, so you like a football-sized golden ball. And it expands outwards, diffuses. One last time. And then taking the seat for meditation. So if you've not been here before, just finding a chair to sit on, or something that's fairly firm, or you can sit on cushions on the floor, but they need to be quite firm. So what we're going to do this morning is loving kindness meditation. So just settling into your posture. And acknowledging how you're feeling at the moment. And just having a sense that you're a human being, and that your life has all sorts of experiences in it. Some of them are pleasant, some are painful, some are satisfying, some are not very satisfying. Sometimes you're bored, sometimes you're afraid, sometimes you're ecstatic. Having a sense of what your life is about, really. You know, what do you like, what sorts of things do you like, and what sorts of things do you not like. So we're going to do a meditation in 4 stages. So we're going to focus on loving kindness towards ourselves in the first stage, and then loving kindness towards a good friend in the second stage, loving kindness towards a neutral person in the third stage, and loving kindness towards the whole universe, everybody in the universe, all beings everywhere, in the fourth stage. So we're starting with ourselves, and then we're moving outwards. The metta-bhavana, cultivation of universal loving kindness. So in the first stage, establishing an idea for yourself of what happiness is for you. So taking your mind back into the past and just recalling a time when you felt really happy, when everything was going well for you. And just identifying what that situation was. What were you doing at the time? What was it about the situation that you liked? Was it because you were with people, or was it interacting well, or was it because you were on your own and enjoying being on your own? Were you doing something in particular, or were you not doing anything at all? What is happiness for you in general? So just try to cultivate that some sort of image or memory, remembrance of what you value. And while acknowledging that maybe your life is not like that at the moment, it might be a bit like that. Not worrying about that, how you are now, how things are now. You're just going to try to keep this in mind, this precious time. And just as you might want anything, want a new computer or iPhone or whatever it is, can you allow yourself to just want this to happen again? So loving kindness is an emotion, it's something that we're doing. So maybe imagine that you're stood behind yourself and then you're pushing yourself gently in the direction of this vision, of this happy vision. And you're saying to yourself, may you be well. May I be well. And if some other emotion is there, like doubt or distraction or something, don't give it any attention. Just keep coming back to this simple idea of yourself and what's happiness for you, your own happiness, your own experience of happiness, what that is. And then just gently urging yourself in that direction. So one of the conditions for getting happiness is to actually want it in the first place, which isn't automatic. We can be indifferent towards ourselves, we can be critical and hostile towards ourselves, thinking that, you've not done very well. But those are not very helpful emotions, they're unskillful emotions. So what we're looking for is a gentle encouragement of ourselves to move in the direction of what happiness is for us. May I be well. Just breathing into and through any areas of tension. Trying to maintain a sense of vitality in your body and in your posture. Keep coming back to the memory, a happy memory. Just letting it inform your mind. So if we're going to be happy in the world, we need two things basically. We need to want it, which is this meditation, loving kindness, cultivate a desire for our own welfare. That's half of the question, half of the picture, and then the other half is that we bring mindfulness to our situation and turn it from being a source of suffering to being a source of happiness. So these are the two great pillars of Buddhism. So now, in the second stage, just let a sense of yourself and your happiness dissolve into the background, and bring to mind a good friend, somebody who is maybe roughly the same age, and where there's not a kind of sexual attraction or romantic attraction to them. Just to keep it simple, they're just a friend. Another person, somebody we like. And then just using your imagination to, with what you know of your friend, to think, well, what's their peak experience, what's their happy situation, what do they really like to be doing. So it might be something that's quite a bit different from what yours was. Maybe they're a more adventurer type or something like that. Love stimulation. Or maybe you're the adventurer and they're the more quiet type. Just tuning into what you imagine is their peak experience. Maybe even imagine them doing it, being there, doing that. And then imagine that you kind of stood behind them and you're gently urging them, pushing them from behind in the direction of that experience. You're wanting them to go for it. Bring it into being. May they be well. And if other emotions are there, doubt, or we just feel a bit distracted or something, don't worry about that, don't give that too much attention. Just keep coming back to the image of your friend in that happy state, or keeping it front and centre. Their happy situation, their vital situation. And keeping it front and centre, the idea that you really want that for them, you're pushing them metaphorically in that direction, maybe leaning into the back, pushing them from behind. Come on, go for it, go for it. May you be well. And just checking how you are, how you're feeling at the moment. Checking that you're still just letting your body just sit there and be supportive to your mind and your emotions. that you have some energy there in your body, and you're trying to maintain that consciously in the same way that you try to develop some energy when you're doing the body work. So that there's a buoyancy in the body supporting your meditation. And now in the third stage of the meditation, where you we'll let the image of our friend dissolve into the background. We bring to mind a neutral person, somebody who we see around, but we don't have any strong feelings one way or the other towards them. They're just neutral. And doing the same with them that we did with ourselves and our friend, good friend. Imagining what might be this person's peak experience. What do you think they're really interested in? What do they really like? Are they happy just being in a group? Where they're just one of the crowd. They just feel like they belong. But they want things to just be simple, not too complicated. Do they like to have their children around them, parents? Just what are they like? What is their life like? What do they like doing? Do they like going out into nature, going for walks on a Sunday? So just trying to fill out the picture of the neutral person. Fill out your picture of them. And once you've identified what you think might be their ideal experience, imagine that you're just leaning into their back, just pushing them gently towards that experience. May they be well. You're really wanting them to go for it. You're not indifferent to what happens to them. May they be well. So like any emotion, we can feel care and kindness a little bit, or we can feel it a lot. In theory, it can be unlimited, of unlimited intensity. So just trying to kind of increase the amount of care that you feel for this person. Trying to want their well-being a bit more and a bit more. Let's have this be the place that you put your energy at the moment. And having a sense that if you put your energy into this now, that when you come out of the meditation, that you'll feel motivated to move towards this person and be friendly towards this person, because you've put them on the agenda for yourself. That's the point of meditation. We develop something, then we go and use it. So in the fourth and final stage, bringing back into the picture ourselves and our friend. So there's all three people that we've been focusing on in the meditation. Just imagining all three together. Just imagine pushing all three towards their particular visions of happiness. So we're not preferring any one to any other. We're just wanting them all to be well, wanting them all to be happy. Trying to increase the intensity that we feel that we really want them to be happy. Come on, let's get something into our lives that's really working. And then including the people here in the meditation who are meditating with us, having a sense of each person and their particular desires, their particular idea of happiness. Imagine kind of being behind them, pushing them towards that ideal, towards that experience. May they be well. And then just keep going out into the world, all the people in your local area. Just identifying what might be their peak experience, their happiness, their fulfillment. Even just acknowledging that they will have something like that. And really wanting that to be the case for them, for that to come into being, that experience. But just keeping it all simple, keeping the meditation simple. Having a sense of caring more and more widely and more intensively for all the beings out there. Wishing them all well, wishing them all the best. And including all sorts of beings, people of different genders and social classes and races and economic groups, and including animals and birds, fish, insects. None of them want to suffer, so getting behind that truth and wishing them well, wanting them to be well. So in your own time, just bringing that meditation to a close. Okay, so today's session is on secular mindfulness, so I kind of feel like I'm kind of quite surrounded by secular mindfulness as a Buddhist. A lot of my friends are involved in running courses that are basically secular courses in national health settings and other mindfulness-based settings, and so I've been side by side with this whole growth of the mindfulness movement for a long time. So for instance, back in 2008, I went to this conference in Rome, and it was at that time what was happening was the beginnings of the mindfulness movement, and it was the early days of scientific acceptance. So a lot of there were various mainstream mindfulness therapies. So there was John Kabat-Zinn's MBSR, Mindfulness-based Stress Reduction, and then there's Mindfulness-based Cognitive Therapy, which was Mark Williams and others originated in the UK, which is based on MBSR, but deliberately trying to target recurring depression. And then there was something called Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, which is Stephen Hayes. So Stephen Hayes, his books, Get Out of Your Mind and Into Your Life. And then there was Marsha Linehan, who had something called Dialectical Behaviour Therapy. So at that conference I saw Marsha Linehan speak, so it's really interesting that a lot of the so for instance the field that Marsha Linehan was kind of dealing with was largely people who had something called borderline personality disorder. So this is a condition where people, they're quite suicidal and they're quite regularly self-harming, and when they have a therapist or somebody trying to work with them, because they go, the psyche just goes so far to extremes, one extreme to another, that it's completely tiring for the therapist to keep up with them. So Marcia brought mindfulness in from I think she got it from Zen Buddhism, and as a way of stabilizing all of that and bringing awareness to helping the therapist ground themselves and to try. So really kind of really sort of it just helped. It was one of the few things that helped in that very, very difficult situation. And it's similar with John Kabat-Zinn. So John Kabat-Zinn kind of invented mindfulness-based stress reduction back in the early 80s or something like that, because the people he was dealing with had chronic pain and there was nothing that they could do. The ordinary medicine was failing them. No matter how much painkillers they were given, this pain was still there. And so the authorities allowed him to try this different thing, to try mindfulness, which he'd got from Zen Buddhism, and practice in that tradition. And it worked, so it worked. So during the 2000s, there's a kind of just a gradual growth of mindfulness-based therapies, and they were called the third wave of behavioural psychotherapy. So the first wave was just behaviourism, Skinner. So this is where you just look from the outside at people's behaviour, and and just see what works to change. What brings about a result. If you do one thing, you don't worry about what's internal, what's going on internally. So that was the first wave of behavioural psychotherapy, and the second wave was CBT, Cognitive Behaviour Therapy. So in that, Aaron Beck was the originator of that, and so what you had was the idea that there was something called a cognitive model. So you had four dimensions: physical dimension, feeling dimension or mood. You had thoughts, and you had behaviours, and then they're all within an environment. So in the CBT model, it's like if you're looking to change your mood, you look at how your behaviours are affecting your mood. So if you try and be more cheerful, even though you feel depressed, it positively affects your mood. What you do with your body, you go and get exercise, and that affects your mood. What you do with your thoughts, you try and make your thoughts more accurate, in line with reality. So if you think, "Oh, I'm a complete failure," you'll feel depressed. But if you put that thought on trial and say, "Well, actually, I'm not a complete failure because I was quite good at this and that," then it moderates the mood. So it's just looking at CBT. Just works on that level of what you can observe. And then the third wave is the mindfulness-based therapies that I've just mentioned. So so at the time when I was at that conference, there's the beginnings. Well, no, it's not the beginnings. It already got going, but the whole thing of scientific validation for mindfulness-based therapies was a lot of, to get into a national health service or to a health service, you have to meet the various criteria. Like it has to be evidence-based, scientifically verifiable. So John Kabat-Zinn had a bit of a slight ding-dong battle with various people to get MBSR validated, because people would say, "Well, hang on a minute, what science needs to pin everything down exactly, and he's giving a therapy in a way. He's giving a kind of something it's not, you can't just pin it all down. So he had a bit of a battle to get it accepted, but it was accepted in the end because you got all this evidence that it works scientifically. And then it's just grown from there. So in Jeff Wilson's book, Mindful America, Jeff he looks at the subtitle of that is The Mutual Transformation of Buddhist Meditation and American Culture. So, how Buddhist meditation and American culture have kind of had a sort of symbiotic relationship with each other. So in his book, in Jeff Wilson's book, he talks about ways in which that mindfulness has come into American culture, and through various processes. So the first process he talks about is the process of mystification. So one of the things that John Kabat-Zinn would do, he'd say, well, mindfulness being secular mindfulness is the Dharma. It's the Dharma. So Dharma is the teaching of the Buddha, right? It's the Buddha Dharma, but it's also not Buddhism. So it's like a kind of it feels like that statement is kind of, it's like confusing. It's like muddying the waters. It is and it isn't. It is the Dharma and it isn't the Dharma. So what he's trying to do there is to mystify it, so that people think, oh, it's all right. It's not Buddhism. We don't need to worry about it. It's like weaving a spell over it and going, oh, yeah, ding. You don't need to worry. Ding. So it got mystified. It was also medicalised. So this is the scientific. So that made it acceptable. It's like it became something that you do in order to overcome a particular branch of suffering. So mindfulness got all sorts of different mindfulness-based therapies came out that addressed different conditions like eating disorders and depression and all sorts of things like that. It became mainstreamed in America, and what Jeff talks about is the way in which you had. First of all, you had, if you went back in the history of mindfulness teaching, you had Buddhists teaching Buddhists, and then you had Buddhists teaching non-Buddhists, and then you had non-Buddhists teaching non-Buddhists, and then you had anybody. You've got non-Buddhists writing books on Buddhism. So it just became kind of something that more and more people felt like they could teach it or write a book on it, or because it's given this sense of being in a way ordinary and part of the culture, and then it just got marketed. So in the end, the word mindful became something that you could sell things under. Mindful soap or mindful whatever, perfume or something. It's a bit like it became a brand in itself. So a couple of years ago, Jeff Wilson wrote an article for Tricycle magazine called "The Religion of Mindfulness," and what Jeff is a Canadian I think he's a professor of religious studies. So his field is to see is to look into religions, and what he thought basically what he became intrigued by was like he said, well, the mindfulness movement seems to be acting a bit like a religion, really. He said that when you talk, so it would talk about being secular all the time. We're not religious, we're secular. So he makes the point. I don't quite get this, but he makes the point that when you're talking about secular all the time, it's like you're drawing boundaries around, and you're keeping kind of other religions out, or you're keeping religion out, but that's a religious act in itself. Defining beliefs about reincarnation as being disposable, so it's something that secular wouldn't allow something like reincarnation in, is a form of boundary drawing and in-group making. Talking about mindfulness as a way of life. Well, Buddhism's a way of life as well, and kind of like sort of policing the boundary around secular mindfulness. So I think one way in which people do that is that you can tell that that's happening, is that you find yourself being corrected, so I've found myself being corrected around mindfulness by people who are involved in secular mindfulness. They say, no, it's not that, mindfulness is this, or we need to stick to this, and so all of this is kind of so what does this mean? What does this mean in terms of secular mindfulness, and what's the main point I'm trying to make here? Well, I think the main point is that it's like, well, what is a religion? What is a religion? Well, in a way, if you could see like Live Aid as a kind of religion. So what happened with Live Aid was that there was a sense in which a whole mass of people came together, and they had shared values, and there was a sense in which there was something ethical going on, like helping the people in Africa, and there's a sense of like mutual identification, but also of enjoyment there. But also it was kind of limited, so it wasn't like, it was very much still in the Western mode of things, So what is the Western mode of things? Well, it's like what's emphasised. Well, what's emphasised are things like individuality, So with mindfulness as a if we think of it as a religion, then one of the things emphasised is like individuality. So it's like when people learn compassion. So people have gone compassion courses, like they do mindfulness courses. It's not compassion in the sense of like you do the metta bhavana and you're wishing all beings well. It's called self-compassion. So it's a bit like you do compassion in order to improve your relationship to yourself. So in that way, it stays within the bounds of that particular belief system, or in a way, if you call it a religion, it's a religion. It's the religion of individuality. It's also a religion of science and technology, that somehow if you produce a technique like mindfulness as a technique, then if you think of mindfulness as a technique, you just do your 3-minute breathing space in the middle of your work day, and then that fixes something for you. You feel a bit better, feel a bit more grounded, a bit less in your head and all that, and then you get back to work. So so the what's he called? I've forgotten his name. Anyway, there's this famous philosopher, modern philosopher. I think he might be Serbian, and his name's completely gone. Anyway, he says that secular mindfulness and capitalism are the perfect fit. So I think what he's saying is that it's like, so secular mindfulness, it addresses suffering, it helps people with health conditions, with depression, it helps in all sorts of ways with suffering, and you can still get on with your ordinary life without having to look at that really, or even think about it, about whether what you're doing is all that helpful, or So I think what Buddhism, you're not invited to step outside of your situation in terms of your job or what you're doing in society. Your attitude towards other people, all those sorts of things, are not addressed, within that particular. So your attitude towards others is left to other things like religions, for instance. Other religions. So Zizek. Thank you. is the guy. It's left to other like non-individualistic religions who have love thy neighbour as thyself, for instance, as a tenet. So so I think Jeff Wilson's making a really important point here. And why? So why is he making an important point? Well, I think the thing about religion is that you're either in one religion or you're in another, and it's like you pays your money and you takes your choice. So people who choose secular mindfulness, in a way, they're choosing that over Buddhism, to the extent that that is what the view that they're expounding. If they're involved in the structure of that, they're patrolling that boundary and keeping people within that. This is how you should be thinking. So within Triratna, we get corrected. I get corrected if I'm sort of straying off the party line or something like that. But maybe in Triratna it's quite a broad one. So all religions, or even schools within religions, have their particular set of practices that they do, and a particular set of kind of cultural beliefs and that sort of thing. So in Buddhism, you had a split between the Theravada and what became the Mahayana Buddhism, and it was over the practices that were being done. So one bunch of Buddhists wanted to do more intensive practices, and the others, or it was something like that. So it's like you can't be practicing two lots of different practices, So you just have one set of practices that you're doing. Otherwise, it's confusing. So So that within Buddhism, some people will chant the Triratnavandana in one way, and others will chant it in a different way, and you can't do both in a way. So you have to sort of make your choice about what you do. And some Buddhists will move from one to the other. So there'll be Triratna Buddhists, and then they'll maybe work in a right livelihood business, which is teaching mindfulness in a secular way. And then they just need to be clear about what it is that they're doing, and the fact that that's, in a way, it's a kind of job, but the real values are over here, and they need to sort of like not mix the two together. Yes, I think that's all I've got to say about secular mindfulness. I'll just show you something from. I talked about Marshall Linehan and Dialectical Behaviour Therapy. I'll just show you something from ACT, or Acceptance and Commitment Therapy. So this is interesting because Stephen Hayes, his version of mindfulness has nothing to do with meditation at all. He says no, and what he's got is a lot of exercises that are about coping, things like experiential avoidance. So in that diagram there, he's saying that you might have some pain there. What tends to happen is you have more pain, and then you avoid it more, and you kind of avoid, and then you have more pain, and you avoid. So it's like there's something about turning towards your experience, so accepting your experience, acceptance and commitment therapy. But the way that you moderate that pain is that you have values that you believe in. So if you're trying to do something helpful for the world, that actually gives you a positive sense of achievement, which is actually pleasurable, so that pleasure mitigates the pain that's there in your difficulty. So if you have commitment to values, then it works against pain. So you have acceptance and commitment. So it's interesting, all the different things that have arisen in the mindfulness third wave of mindfulness-based therapy. So what I'm going to do now, just to finish off, is to take you to the kitchen again, so my kitchen studio. I'm just going to talk in terms of the model that I've been using. So we'll come back to the Four Foundations. So coming back to the Four Foundations of Mindfulness. So we can look at secular mindfulness in terms of how it might fit in with the Four Foundations of Mindfulness. So I'm just going to say a little bit about this, not go too much into detail with it. So, so if we take mindfulness-based stress reduction, for instance, the first practice that you taught in that is the body scan. So you taught to be aware of your body, and you taught to not to try and relax. So the idea is if you try to relax, then you can set up something. You can set yourself up to fail. So if you're trying to relax, then it's a little bit like that thing I was talking about before about the Alexander technique. inhibit yourself. If you're trying to do something, you often tense up in the readiness to do it, so it can be counterproductive to try. So you just inhibit yourself from trying, and just send these suggestions. May this part of my body become longer, or whatever. So in the body scan, you just bring awareness to your body and the different parts of your body. You scan through your body and just be aware of it, and that tends to then help you relax, but not through consciously trying to relax. So the idea is that if you constantly try and relax and you fail, then you set up this negative view about your meditation practice. So you do the body scan, and the way that helps is that often our attention is up here in our thoughts, and so if you can keep bringing yourself down out of your thoughts into your body, into your kind of tangible sensory experience, then these thoughts, which can be thoughts that are like rumination, we can be ruminating about why has this happened to me? It's like thinking. We think that we're in a problem, and then we think that thinking about it is going to be the solution to the problem. Finding the answer, is going to be the solution to the problem. But it's not often, because the more we think about something, it's almost like we dig in a bigger hole. So rumination tends to feed depression rather than alleviate it. So what we can do instead is we can just try and stay aware of the feeling. Stay aware, be aware of the fact that we feel sad, or we feel heavy, or whatever it is, and not try to sort of like struggle out of it, but just stay with it. So if we can stay with it, then often we find a more creative solution than this desperate need to kind of get away from it. I need to not be depressed, and like the more we struggle against it, it's like we're using all our energy up to not be depressed, and that we get less energy then, and we feel more depressed. So and then you've got the idea of decentering. So if we can, it's similar, but we come out of our thoughts and more into our body, then it's like those thoughts become less central to everything, less sort of dominating. They become contextualized, within. There's talk about like a bigger container. So when you have difficulties, you can put them in a bigger container where they're just one element of a lot of other elements that might be positive, like it's a nice day outside, or we might have a pain in our body, but we reflect that it was pleasant to be with our friends, all sorts of experiential things that then mitigate against that feeling of that pain, whatever. So a lot of the emphasis is on dealing with feeling. So to notice when we're having painful feeling, and just as you go through the course, you'd start to focus on pain to start with, and then just to see as it's just pain, it's just feeling, it's just experience, and we don't have to then go to a reaction to it, which is up here. We don't have to then agonise about it, or the agonising would be here. It's the arrow. It's the second arrow. So the first arrow is here, of sensation, painful sensation, and the second arrow is here. So we don't have to agonise about it. We can just accept it. Acceptance is key in MBSR. But also we look at like pleasant feeling, and on a secular mindfulness course, you'd start to be encouraged to notice pleasant feelings that you have that are happening, and like with the painful feelings, you sort of say, well, what else is going on when I feel a pleasant feeling? What thoughts are happening? What feelings are happening? What's happening in my body? So you start to build up a sense that it's not just an isolated thing, it's contextualized. It's like there's other things going on that you can be aware of. That if you're aware that it's coming from somewhere, it's conditioned, then it's not. It becomes more within our control. And central within the week one on the secular mindfulness course, you'd be introduced to the idea of automatic pilot. So you just we're just kind of going through life on automatic pilot. We just do the shopping, we do this, we do that. We don't really notice anything that's around us, what our experience actually is. So the emphasis is to come into the present moment. So that all this is happening in the present moment. Come into the present moment on purpose, non-judgmentally. So if we what tends to happen is that if we might experience a feeling, and then we might think, oh, this is bad, I'm experiencing pain, and then we naturally don't want to, because we think it's bad, we want to push it away and not experience it. But we need to experience it, so we need to not judge it as good or bad. We just need to experience it and then deal with it in some way or other, in an appropriate way. Find a way of dealing with it appropriately. So the idea of non-judgmental, being non-judgmental is about our experience, not about being non-judgmental about what we're doing in life, or how we're responding to people or whatever. That we need to make judgments about that, whether that is good or bad. Good or bad's up here, really. Skillful and non-skillful. It's not down here. Here is, we need to just accept, just be aware and not judge our experience. So I think the secular mindfulness seems to mainly deal with what's down here, and also here. So we're kind of like, we're trying to not to respond. We're trying to respond rather than react. So often when we feel pain, then we don't want it. We're aversion towards it. So we're trying to not do that. To pause, just stay aware of the feeling and not rush into some sort of reaction. So it is, secular mindfulness is like dealing with here, but it does it in a limited sort of way. So the idea of compassion is kind of, it's more implicit than explicit. So the idea of being kind is there, in secular mindfulness. But it can't be explicit. It can't be explicit in the way that, as a directive, that you need to, love others or something like that. So this is where we have the idea of, in religious education, you've got the idea of professional versus confessional. So professional is where somebody teaches religion in a way that it's just religion. A religion is just one view among many views, Whereas when you teach something confessionally, you say you should practice this. This is what you should be doing. So secular education is professional. It's not confessional, unless it's within a religious school or something. So I've forgotten where we're going with this. So you won't practice precepts in. You will practice precepts in Buddhism. So you'll try and be kind. You'll try and be generous. You'll try and be aware. All those sorts of things, in order to benefit beings. But but you can't prescribe anything in secular mindfulness that this is what you should be doing. So various things are left out of it like that, like as I say, as like loving kindness towards all beings everywhere. And I think also what gets left out of it is views. So we're not like looking at, so in a way, the view that's held as sacrosanct is the view of that secular society can solve all your problems, or is enough, So it's enough to have, technology, nice gadgets, a job, and then we just assume that when you die, nothing happens after death. So there's no need to be bothered about that. So in a way, that view is kind of enshrined, whatever, or even if you take Zizek as being right, you'd say, well, actually, it's maybe the capitalist view is kind of a little bit enshrined. So then that view is not then challenged; it's not investigated. Whereas Buddhism does investigate all views and say, well, actually, is it true that happiness will come from me building up material possessions and subduing enemies? So these are what are seen as in Buddhism as laziness. It's lazy to build up material possessions and concentrate on subduing enemies, because that is not the Buddhist view of what's going to lead to happiness. What's going to lead to happiness is like loving kindness and being intelligent about what we invest ourselves in. So if we invest ourselves in things that are going to decay and fall apart, then we're going to suffer. So Buddhism would challenge that the kind of materialist view. Now I went into this in the talk on the middle way, Yeah, so I think enlightenment is when we bring all four foundations up to their maximum. We bring mindfulness to all four and develop all four. So it's fine to, just like it's fine to go and have exercise. Exercise in moderation is a good thing for us. It's fine to practice secular mindfulness to the extent that it improves our lives and it works, and also, so, and if it needs to be taught in that sort of way so that people can accept it, then that's okay. But I suppose, I think what I'm saying is we need to be clear about where it runs out, what its limitations are, and so if we're thinking in terms of a bigger picture of happiness, which includes other people, which includes dealing with things that fall apart as well, or what Buddhism would call like false refuges, things that don't, that are limited, then it isn't helpful to just stop at secular mindfulness and not move beyond it. So I think that's everything I've got to say, really. Yeah. I hope so, anyway. Alright then, thanks everyone, and I'll see you tomorrow. Okay.